Hi everyone, welcome back to the studio. Today we're going to paint some double hollyhocks, and then I'm going to do some other hollyhocks and some beautiful smaller summer flowers for our summer flower series. But anyway, today was double hollyhocks, and I have a photo up here. These are white double hollyhocks. I've painted them in the Dutch. I've done a couple of lessons of them over the year, but it's been a couple of years since I painted them, so these ought to be kind of fun. We're going to do this a wet-on-wet technique, so those painting in oils and stuff will be able to do it as well. Just follow right along. We're going to use that method of thin to thick. We're going to start out thin and put thick. So this is a wood panel. I love to paint on the wood panel, especially if I'm going to do like a hollyhock where you have a lot of smaller petals on the inside. So there's going to be a lot of detail. I like the smoothness of the wood panel. And then I gave it a coat of one coat of the canvas prep medium, the JansenArt canvas prep medium, and then sanded it lightly with 180 degree grit sandpaper. This is 11 inches this way, 14 inches this way. Now for my colors, this is my standard palette that you've seen me use all the time. I list all the colors, everything I use is in the video description below, okay? So the extender and stuff, everyone always writes, what extender do you use? Everything I use is in the video description below. And I use the JansenArt extender, which is in this little cap here. And then I use the Matisse Deravan open medium. And the reason I'm a big advocate of never switching and mixing brands, because as a paint chemist for over 20 years, and they're not always compatible. Even though they may say acrylic, they're not always compatible. It doesn't always work. But Matisse Deravan makes our formula for us, so we know this works. So you can use any Matisse Deravan products with our products, and there's no problem because they make it for us, okay? All right. So what I'm going to do here first is I'm going to make, I like the kind of almost a violet. So they have a violet to a yellow. That's going to be really pretty. I'm going to accentuate that and deepen some of those tones down here into a shadow. So I want to have a shadow area and a light area. And I just love that about this photo that I found. I'm not going to copy it. I'm just going to use it for some inspiration. So I'm going to have some, I like the light violet into the sky. So blue and the violet, and then some white. We'll keep our white kind of clean here for a bit. Here, we'll make a real light. That might be a little too purple. So we'll add a bit more white and a bit more blue to it here. It just takes a little bit because these colors are so powerful. But I do want to go down a bit, and this intensity might be a little too cool, so we'll add a touch of the burnt sienna to warm this up. See how it grays it and warms it up right away? And we can add lighter and darker colors as we get into the painting. So now I'm going to take my big old 2-inch brush, add some extender in it, and mix this up into this kind of purpley background color here. And we'll put this on. So I'm into the about value-wise down around a 5 or a 6, closer probably to a 5 here. And I'll lighten it up in a minute, but I want to have some of the deeper tones. You got to have white show up against it. Does that make sense? And so we don't want to make a tough painting for us, so we'll get some white. We have to have the white show up against it. So which means I've got to drop it down value-wise here to a 5 or a 6 or something like that. And then I can manipulate the value of the background down there. So I'm right. Yeah, I'm right. It's right about a 7 right now, right there at a 7. So it'll dry down to about a 6. So that's where that sits. Now, while that's wet, let's go back and let's put in some light. And we'll put in some light and some shadow here. And so we'll add some of our light through it here. So I'm going to have basically it coming through here, and the hollyhocks climbing up through here, and some dark and some light, and I want some of that. Now, that's overall, it's real even, and I love, how I love to play the colors and stuff, so I'm going to go to the blue greens in here as well. Got a little part, there it is right there, a little grungy right there. And I'm going to go to a little blue-green, lighter blue-green. Fun. We're going to have to put out some more white. I can see that right now. The here we'll put some of the blue-green in here like this, okay, and lighten that up right in here, that blue-green here. Yeah, see, that's, you get a little bit of that blue-green in there. I like that. Let's go a little bit here with this color, a little bit more blue. So we go for that blue-green, that violet. I love to play the backgrounds, to get all these different colors and stuff like that here into the backgrounds. So we'll play these backgrounds a bit here. That'll be pretty. So we pick up some of that violet, some of this little blue-green, and some lighter color up here. That will, and remember, this will dry down, so you know it'll dry value darker. So we're putting in here with this real light, I'm about a 9, as you can see. So it'll probably dry to an 8 or so. Down, acrylics dry about 1 value darker. Oils and stuff dry about the same value, so you would make that up to about the same value. Okay, so that's got that there. And I'm just going to wipe this brush for a minute, because I'm going to use this color in it again. So we'll do that. Now, we'll come down into I love all the deep colors in here. So I want to have some real deep darks and everything for the HollyHocks to play against. And we will take some of I love my burnt sienna and my green, maybe a touch of blue, this nice dark colors here. And I love, and I'm going to use my knife here for a minute, and see, I love this. I've always loved the skipping of that color over it. Okay, I can soften it out. It's easy to soften it out, but there's something about the knife and putting all of this on. And you know, some of you that like real softness right now, your eyes are probably popping out of your head. But this, hang with me for a minute, okay? And we'll get some of this through here. And I just love that. We'll soften it out, okay? We'll make it look like we know what we're doing in just a minute. Okay, now, sometimes I soften that out with my paper towel. You've seen me do that. This time I'm just going to take my brush and pull down through it. Boom. And then wipe that brush, because I don't want to drag that color absolutely everywhere. Pull down through it. Just take some of it off. Wipe that brush. Right? Let's just move the color around here now a bit. Here. And this is just the same brush I just used into the background. So I like that. It's going to dry that brush out just a little bit more. When you see some of those heavier marks, your brush is still a little bit wet. So get it a little bit drier here, and then it'll go a little bit smoother. And I don't want to blend it, so I don't want to do too much to blend here. So I'll stop short here. Let's get that burnt sienna and green. I love that. Let's apply it. So that HollyHock is going to come right in here. And I can add some darks later on as well. But let's get that a little heavier right in there. Right? Green, burnt sienna, a little blue, sometimes maybe even a little violet in that. Get that nice dark down in there and stuff. And you can also go to a smaller brush. Now, one of my favorite smaller brushes to use is the 3/4 inch. So I could use the 3/4 inch in here and just manipulate around some of this movement. And I could use it for, to really impart some darkness later on. But I want this movement, because our HollyHocks, as we put these in here, they're going to cover up a lot of this movement and stuff into the background. So, we want to make sure that we do get enough. But a lot of this is just going to disappear. So we want, there we go, just grab some of that. I love those colors. See, I like that movement, because as we put this on, it'll just look like other little layers of color and stuff going back there. Now, you can wipe with the paper towel if you get too much or anything. I'm actually going to add some more to this, so it's going to get more. But I love this play right in here. I might want to accentuate that play a little bit more here. Drop some of this. I want that movement, because that's going to look like stems and backgrounds and stuff. And we're, a lot, like I say, guys, Don't be afraid of it. A lot of it will disappear. Let's grab some of our light, some of the blue, and some of our light, and we'll pull back down the other way to soften that edge. So I can take this color a little dirty, pull it back the other way, soften some of those marks, but I like a few of those marks in there because that's just interest into the background, okay? All right, let's look at like one of the hollyhocks, how we're gonna, and you should have some nice green on your hands by now, okay? So how are we gonna plan these hollyhocks? We're gonna go down with some of the violets. I'm gonna get a gray, nice beautiful gray. Let's head this gray over to the violets, the blues, violets, some of the greens, burnt siennas. See this beautiful gray? Let's add a little open medium to it. We'll start painting just a touch thicker. A little open medium, a little white. That's just a little thick for me, so I'm going to add just a bit of extender. Extender and open medium are compatible with each other, so you don't have to worry. I like this one kind of turned here. Now, so let's do one. Let's keep these a little smaller too. Let's not get wild and crazy. I'm just going to look through here because I'm going to build my own composition. I'm not going to copy that. I'm going to build my own composition here. So let's push one right out over here. You do ovals to turn them. So here's one kind of turned this way, one kind of turned up a bit here, okay? And I like this one kind of dropping down there. I'm going to leave a little bit of an opening there. And I'll pick up some green and some other colors there. I want that. I want that in there. Let's grab just a bit more of the violet, bit of the white here, right in here. I want to go more violet as I go down. So a little bit more blue and violet, touch of the burnt sienna. That keeps it more gray. The burnt sienna keeps the grayness into it. And I'm going to go darker yet. This is just my first look. So that one will kind of, like this one almost, but pointed up and out and down. And then back down through here, let's go a little darker, even a little red violet into this. Some darker violets coming right down in here as these come down this way. Now, we can put some of those smaller. Let's go just a bit. You know, they have all these smaller little bits, and we could actually take, let's do a little bud like right there. Maybe a little bud back here as these go up that way. Something like that. We're going to play even more color, but that's kind of what I'm thinking about. Now, light's coming. We're going to bring light in from this side. So let's get a little more dark right in there. Nice violet, darker violet colors. A little bit more violet into that, some violet into this side. So we're putting in the light and shadow side of each of them. So we have the light side and the shadow side coming down here. I love that deepness into that one right down there. So we might just build a heavier, darker one right down in here, right all the way down here. That's pretty good. I love also that real dark. So let's go over here with some green, some burnt sienna, some blue, burnt sienna and some of that blue, that real dark. Let's get some of that in there. Push that. And let some of that, when you're painting, and you're going to be painting the hollyhocks, what I did before when I painted them in the Dutch technique and everything, I gave them kind of transparent petals, which means you just pinch wipe the color out of your brush and pull some of that color into the petals. And so we can get a transparency or a translucency to the petals later on if we want, by letting some of this background come through the petals. So especially when I'm setting something up, I will drag some background colors right into the petals themselves. And let's just put in a few like little ideas of stems and stuff here. Okay, just some movement of the stems. Don't have to have perfect stems, just some ideas of movements of these big hollyhock stems. Maybe one coming right up off the top like we see in in that we'll just do a large one right here, going right off the top like we see there. Okay, long ways to go, but that starts to set it up here. And a little more blue. Some of these colors, maybe a mark or two out here. We can, you know, put in leaves and stuff like that later, but I want some of these marks of color here. Here like this. Just, I love the Impressionism. And so, you know, we can decide to paint some pretty leaves and stuff, you know, very structured leaves, very leaves that are very much hollyhock leaves, or we can do it all as a color, a mark of a color, which is what I prefer when I do a lot of real impressionistic type paintings here. So let's just move that color around a little bit, okay? Now, yeah, that's pretty good. Now let's take some of that some heavier burnt sienna, maybe a touch of yellow, but a heavier burnt sienna right into that. Get some open medium in this so it'll stay wet for a little bit. Let's come right down in here, right into the center. So the double hollyhock is going to have this, these white ones are going to have kind of the purple larger petal at the outside, and then into your yellows and burnt siennas into the inside. So we'll just model in some of this color here. And I love Diarylide Yellow and burnt sienna and some open medium here. I love those two together. I love that brighter yellow in there. Try to be just quick and stab and try not to, and if you notice when I'm putting this on, see I'm kind of turning and rotating my brush so I don't make repetitive marks. When we're painting really casual like this, we want to I call it sometimes stab art here. We just kind of stabbing it through, and so we don't make repetitive marks. Let's grab some open medium, some Diarylide here, and push in a little more Diarylide here. Sometimes a little yellow oxide so the color changes, right? Let that color, all your color, that's where you're going to get the prettiest. You're setting up, and I like how, and I learned how to do this, and I like the name that John Howard Sandon always put in. He was a portrait painter, but when he made these gorgeous portraits, he always said you put in the mosaic of tones for the face. And so I apply that right to flowers, to landscapes, to everything I do. I put in a mosaic of tones, okay? So now let's come back over here to some of our violets, maybe a little more violet, maybe a touch of white here, okay? And we'll put in a soft directional bit here. Pull in, maybe touch a little more color, pull in slightly here, and this will start our transparency here. Change the color a little bit. Now as we come up and around, maybe a little more white, maybe a touch of Diarylide into that. So the color as we come up and around here starts to lighten up. We're thinking of going to our light side here, see? So and I'm using the big brush, the 3/4 inch brush here. And I like that kind of petal right there. That's kind of real pretty right there like that. Let's take, since we're on the light, let's come back up over here to this light side over here. Boom, 1, 2, right in there. A little heavier white, a little bit of open medium. Get that open medium in there. Okay, now we'll go back towards our shadows as we come around the corner here and back up over to this other side here. And maybe a little bit more blue, a little bit more violet here. A little open medium in it here, so we get this shadow tone right up underneath there. That's kind of pretty right there. Let's repeat it again. Now since we're in the shadows, let's go back down over to this shadow side over here. Build that in here. A little bit lighter, not quite as light as the other ones, but a little bit lighter up over here. So we build that nice little ring right there. And then slightly lighter up over here. We have a little one there, but not too much. And then we go over to our darks. So right with that violet, and we'll establish that violet right down in through here, right? All the way to that whole dark side there, right? And you model it all up. Model up this violet here. Model it all up. Push this darks in here. This is where I want this light to dark through these HollyHocks here. So I'll push some more darks down into a few other little areas here. But some of that nice dark, maybe a little bit more on the violet side here. So we got these heavy darks. And then we'll take some of our greens, burnt siennas, greens, some blues, some real darks here, a little bit more dark, even into some of that dark violet. Let's take that right in through here, where these dark sides of these HollyHocks are going to go down over here, right? Zoom right down into there. Love that. Let's push that around my little clip there. Push some of that. So some of these darks here, will translate up through these petals just a bit. So I'm looking at that, and so I want maybe a bit of these greens and stuff over. I like kind of that mark there, so maybe a bit of that. And sometimes I will wipe with my towel and move some of those colors and soften, because I want the darker colors to the lighter colors. That's what I'm kind of envisioning here, right in here. But we'll have some other little marks here, marks of color. And I love, as I go up here, maybe a bit more to the burnt siennas, because that's your warmer tone. So you're heading up to the lights here, so you can get some marks of the lighter, warmer tone here, right? A little heavier, maybe a bit of a stem, or idea of a stem or something. And you can see a lot of those when the buds are really heavy, so we could add some of those if we want. Okay, now let's come back. We'll pinch wipe that brush. We'll go right back in here to where our grays were, some open medium. Let's go a little lighter and a little warmer. Okay, here. And we'll look, and this 3/4 inch might be a bit big, so I turn it on its side. I try to follow good alla prima, and what Sargent always said is paint with as large a brush as possible. I'm going to use a smaller brush in some of this to do petal edges and stuff, but right now I'm doing just color movement and streaks through the petals. So I'm going to try to use a large brush and get some of these streaks and stuff through there. Let's use this, just tap that through, get some of these streaks, right? And then we'll go more of a medium gray value right into here. Let some of that come through into there. Some open medium. So we head over to some of these beautiful grays here. Some of that pulls through here, like that. So I'm looking just for the streaks and the marks, right? And let's lighten some of this up here. There we go. And, they have little undulating edges and stuff like that, and we can do that. Sometimes I will put a bit of a shadow right up by the edge, because you'll see shadows come up right by the edge if we're going to do the petal edging technique that I like to do. So we'll look at that. Now I took out a little too much of my dark right in there, so I want to pull some of that back out here. Let's get some of this light, some yellows, burnt siennas, some of our grays right up here. Get some of those beautiful tones here, right up around this lighter petal there. You got to remember, so this is going to dry darker. So, you know, may look like you're going to get this very light, which we are. We're going to build it again. But it's, you know, it's going to go, it's going to dry down a little bit darker. So we have to remember that as we're painting this. So we'll build this a few times. I'm going to build this, then build the center, then we go back and build this again. So build these lights. And use your brush in all different kinds of ways. You're just painting for movement in and out of the center here. So turn your brush on the corners. Get some thin marks, some thicker marks here. I'll gray this down a bit over here. And let some of that grayness and that wet on wet come through here. So you can see everything in here is wet. And my hollyhock is going to be very grayed and darker. Maybe even a little bit on the blue side down there. And we might just model some of this color all in here. So I almost like collide them. I love that collision of everything in there. So I might like almost collide these right in here. Let that happen. That's called formal, very formal here. Let's get some of that violet. So I go back through and I look, you know, do I need to have a little bit of that purpley violet in there? And I'm just watching the color movements, getting beautiful color movements in there. That's all I'm building, right? Beautiful color movements here. So let's get a little bit of that violet right in there, right? Go back to that center, some yellows and burnt siennas, and build that back up again. Bit of yellow, maybe even a bit of Diarylide and Hansa Yellow up here onto this one. Build that in. You can see the paint here is very thick. See, it's very, very thick. I'm building it, and I'm just touching and building here. So get some of this variation here. And this is going to make just beautiful centers. This is our mosaic. It'll make just beautiful centers here in just a little bit. I always love it when I paint flowers like this and I just take the time. It takes time to build up all this mottled color. And I work fairly fast, so I don't make too many repetitive marks. I try to just move, you know. Keep those marks from getting too repetitive stuff. Just move. Let's get some of that beautiful, brighter color right up in there. Now, Hansa Yellow, Diarylide Yellow, nice thick. Make sure you have that open medium. I can feel the open medium in the paint. It's a little slipperier, and that's what I'm doing is I'm feeling that in there. So now I'm just going to model this up and get some, so it's got that open medium in there, so you'll get a little transparency. Just tap your brush and move that around, right? We'll do a little bit here, up here, right up in there. And let's put just a bit of that here. We're letting it fade away as it goes back down. Now we're going to light up this top one a little bit more, maybe a bit more violet and the blue and the white. We're going to need to get some more white, some open medium into that so it stays wet and slippery. Let's light it up a bit more. Pull right down into that yellow a little bit. Okay. Let some of that yellow come out into the edge of the flower again. So what I'm doing, see, is I'm building paint. And just lift off just a bit. I'm building the paint now. And now as I start to look to the shapes of the petals, I'll slow down just a bit. Tap that edge just a bit. Okay. here. Maybe have a bit of the violet here as I come around this side to the shadow side here, right in there. So now you can see it's taken a couple times coming around like this, but we're building the shape of the hollyhock. We'll come with the lights right up over here. And I love that color. So that yellow going through right there, which I touched into by mistake, doesn't bother me. Okay, doesn't bother us. We'll build up onto this light side here. Right up into there. And we'll just come right around. Let's set this one right up on here. Okay. Sometimes I'll push with my finger in and out to get some of that blurriness going on. I like to do that. If you're doing with oils, don't use your hands. Use another clean brush. But with these acrylics, the Heritage acrylics, they're completely non-toxic, so you don't have to worry about it. Everything is here. So now, see, this everything is just super wet. Okay, now I'm going to put that larger brush away. I'm going to go down to one of my favorite paintings, which is my 10. Okay, and I'm going to, there's a couple ways we can approach it. First, we can build some of the light into the centers of it, or we can go out and paint the outside edges of the hollyhock. Now, sometimes this is what I like to do. Sometimes I like to put a little shadow out by the edge of the petal for the edge of the hollyhock, and then I use what's called the petal edging technique. I take my corner of my brush. Most of the time I use a filbert bar this, but the flat works as well. And I draw the edge of that petal out like this and pull in just slightly. So I leave a little edge to that petal. And I love painting that way. So I'll come out here, leave a little edge. Sometimes I'll step out into the background just a bit so I have a darker edge if I don't put the darker edge on, right? And then I will come back and streak a little bit, tap that in, right in there. But I like this, using the edge like this. And just pulling in here, varying the widths of the petals here, and the streaks and the marks and stuff like that here. We can do that. And sometimes I'll take some light like this, especially on the light side, and just streak that out through the petal. So I'll get interest that way and maybe tap along the edge out here and make undulating edges and little things like that here. So I'll just put a little more light right in there like that. And some of this right out in here. So a few short strokes, smaller marks. Don't always pull the entire length of the petal every time, because you will make the petals just stiff. Does that make sense? So I don't do that every time. I'll take a little gray here, pull back here, but I tap that around, build the color around, and I'm looking for the interest of it. Like maybe we'll put a light little edge out here, right out like that. Maybe pull these out at an angle like that, so you see this petal coming out like that there. So it's a turned petal here. And I'll redo some shadows maybe. Let's take some of this violet and let's push it right down in here and pull some of that shadow. So I'll paint back and forth my light and shadow sometimes as I'm putting this on. Back out here, go back to a little bit of an edge, and I'll paint the sometimes the background at the same time. So I'll take right here a little bit of my burnt sienna and greens and stuff and play that in there. And basically everything, you know, for many years I was a decorative painter. In decorative painter, you go through once, base coat, shadow, highlight. And then I realized as I head more into fine art, you repeat and repeat and repeat, and do again, do again, do again. And that is what truly gives you, you know, so much beauty and stuff into your painting. I'm going to take a little bit of my burnt sienna and Diarylide here and move that through these. This little guy right up here, I want to have a lot of interest on him, right? So I'll do that. Now, the double hollyhock part, there's all different kinds of ways to paint it, but I like to use some of this a little bit stiffer where it's been drying up here on the edge just a bit. And I'll use some stiffer paint white, and I'm going to go to my filbert. This is a synthetic filbert, and this will allow me to push around thicker paint here and deposit it, and I also slide the little filbert up on the edge so I can pick up a nice little dollop of this thicker white paint, push this around and start building the little petals inside the double hollyhock here. Now you can smush it around, like I could make a whole light area here, just kind of smushing it around like that, and do them very simplistically. Or I can make them a lot of individual little petals. That's going to be up to you here. So I can, you know, I painted them both where I've put out some real pretty little petals, little edges. See, I can push that little edge out there like that. As this is what the little synthetic, this is a number 6 synthetic long handle filbert. And I can roll it and use the edge and put on that little edge like that. Or I can use it flat like this, pull out and give more of a petal look to that right in there, right? And pick up a nice little bead and come right into the center and kind of like draw nice thick little petals here right around like that and build it up, see? Just like that. Let some of that, and if you get too much, let's say you get too much or whatever it is, take like a yellow oxide or something and push that right into the center there, and you'll impart yellow and stuff right into your hollyhock, and then you can come back with a little more light white or something to put on another little petal there. See? Smoosh it around. Get the idea of other little petals here coming out. You can give the look of like a little bowl, almost like a bowl of the rose. We've done that, and push that out here. But you can look at all of them. You can see it gets quite soft too. So not too many petal edges. So get some softness in there, right? And but I do like the edges. I do like the thick little edges here, and to just push those in. But you use just the edge of the brush here. Draw little petals, and as this starts to tack up, you can, if you find that you're not too sure, or you want to add some more, let it start to slowly dry, tack up a bit, and you can come back and add some more. As it gets tacky, it gets easier to add more things to it. But I can take this little edge, let's push this into an edge here, and I could come back and hit the edge of the hollyhock there. I could also take so I could go with like some violet here and push out from the center out, lifting out. I call this the lifting out, the lifting technique. So, and that will increase its translucency or its transparency here as I lift out and take some of that out, see? So there's just a whole bunch of ways that you can do it. Let's take a little bit of that yellow right in here. That's kind of, I like that yellow in there. And let's come back out with some softer lights right out like that. And then we let the smaller petals come up more drawn up into the center here. Here like that. So it's just, so I'll be a little more, you can see like right on the outsides they're a little more soft, and I do like that. So I work that wet into wet, little soft, push the brush down a bit more, and you get softness with the filbert. And if you rise up, if you pick up paint like this and rise up, you get more of the petal look. So that is all for you. But that's getting a lot of paint on there. And when it gets a lot of paint, it gets really difficult to do. So then I'll go down to another one. And sometimes, now here, in those of you you're going to get frustrated as you build it. And you're going to go, okay, that doesn't look good. What is it? Put some on one, move on to the next, move on to the next. Keep moving, and then go back and revisit it again. And usually after you've put like 4 or 5, like on this painting on, you start to get a rhythm of, you know, what you like to see, you know, into these as you're emulating these petals, and they'll get better and better and better, and you go back and revisit again some of your other ones. That's what I've found over the years. So I start to put them on, and then I move through my painting here, and I start to move pretty quick as I'm going through and adding these little movement petals. I start to go really quick so that I don't set up a rhythm, don't set up a one way of doing it. I set up all different kinds of ways here. Don't set up a pattern. That's the word I was looking for. Don't set up a pattern here. Just move those around. Let's drop that edge a little lighter onto that one here. Push that in and out a bit there. Maybe push a little light, a little more light right here. Out like that. That's kind of pretty. So I'll pull shadow from the inside out, and I'll pull light from the outside in. You can streak a little violet sometimes in there. Get those streaks. Go back, touch a little yellow sometimes if you remove some too much here. Get that softness in there, right like that. And we'll come out here a little heavier. Here, draw the outside edge of that petal. Sometimes I'll just push in and out. Get this. All those layers, all those colors now really start to come through. Let's just push. Sometimes I'll do it like that, see, then I'll take my bigger brush, run up right to the edge, and pull it in. So I put the edge on and then pull it in. So we get a little two-brush technique here going. Here. And then I'll pull it in. So, and I don't get that much white on the other brush, so so it preserves the shadow while I put on petal edges and stuff like that. So get that open medium in there. But I want this one a little lighter in there. Out like that. It's kind of pretty. Let's push this one. Right in there. Get that. Sometimes that nice little light edge. It's pretty. There. Build a few little lights. Those other smaller petals out here. Yeah. And again, don't forget, you can come back with yellows. If you get too much white, come back with some of your yellows. Soften it out. Paint back and forth. And really, I mean, what makes them really pretty is when you start to really get some textures on them and stuff. That's when they really get pretty. Now, I wanted this one to come up this way just a bit, and it's not quite doing that. And so I'll just reset like the center up a bit like this, and almost like you're imagining the bowl of a rose down here, and that will turn its position, that will turn its look going back up. And I'll show you the other thing we'll do there. We got to foreshorten a couple of petals because I wanted this one to go up more. So we'll get that here. Just 1 second. I got involved in making petals and forgot that I was just making it all round. We all do that. Okay, now let's come back in here. Let's get a little bit of purples and some blues and stuff here. And we'll foreshorten this side just a bit here. There we go. And you lengthen the sides and shorten the back, and that turns it. So we'll shorten this back here, and that will start to turn it here. That's pretty. And lengthen the sides here, and that turns that back up. But any kind of small little turning shape of yellow and burnt sienna here will help us with that center here. There. Round like that. That's kind of pretty. Yeah. This bottom is a little long, but it could shorten up just a bit. And I'll love to do it this kind of way. Blur it in and through. That's the translucency, you know, of the petal you can get. And there we go. Pull that in. As the paint starts to get a little stiff, it becomes easier and easier. So, you know, working through several of them is really a better idea because the paint starts to stiffen up, and I'll start to get better looking petals here as the paint tightens up just a bit. And in oils, stuff like that, you want it to go a little thicker. You're working thicker, thicker, thicker. In the acrylics, just let it tighten up a little bit. Let it start to dry up just a bit. And then you can come back and really put on some pretty stuff to your petals. That's why I like the acrylics, because I just let it tack up slightly. It gets prettier and prettier. Let's put a beautiful Diarylide down in here. Right in there like that. See, it's layers. I'm painting in layers. Let's let that tack up just a bit. I'll show you some more. Let's get some of that beautiful Diarylide right down in here on this one. It's layers, right? There. Those are coming pretty. Let's do some right here. I'm going to put out some more white here. Smear it out just a bit so it starts to tack up just a bit. Sometimes I use the thickener, and this is the thickener. And with the thickener, I turn around and I add just a bit of it. Let's mix this up here. And I add a little bit of it here off to the side, and you can see, boom, see how it's just thick. It gets thick right away, right? Really thick. And I use that thicker bit with the colors, because it's like it's already stiff and it draws in stuff really easy. Let's come into this edge here. So it draws in that petal really easy here. So that acrylic thickener is really nice sometimes. So, and I'll control it, a little open medium, a little bit of it. Let's put in a softer. Let's see, it's thicker, stiffer here. And I can push in and out, get some of that nice movement, leave some of the shadows here. As I build that, let's take some of this thicker right out here, right out towards the tip of that, right there. Here we go. Right out here. There we go. That's kind of neat. Yeah, and I might expand the petals of the hollyhock here a bit. Put out even some thicker ones right out here. Take the center out a bit more here. They're fun to play with, as long as you don't get frustrated and you realize you can change it so many times. Look at how many times I've now changed it, and it gets really fun to paint when you start to get lots of paint on them. It's harder, you know, especially the acrylic painters. Again, as you start to get a lot of paint, it becomes more difficult, because sometimes it doesn't seem like things stick. And if that starts happening to you, what you do is you just let it tighten up a little bit. Let it start to tighten up a bit, okay? And then it will come back. It will always come back. Let's just flatten that out a bit. Those pretty little petals right there. And take some of this thicker right out there. Boom. You don't have to hit the whole petal. Don't pull the whole petal. Just the edges of it here. Here, like that. You don't have to paint the whole petal. Yeah, we could get some more of those pretty violets in there. A little bit of that violet. Those pretty blue violets in here on that side. Here, a little bit more lighter and violet. Right up like that. And you got to find your way, you know, and it will, when you start out, sometimes you go, oh, those look wrong or something, you know. You just keep moving forward, guys. Just keep moving forward. Sometimes you have to, you know, reset it. Like I say, you get to go wipe some of it off and stuff. But if you just keep moving forward and don't do big things, and that's important. Don't do big things. Do a lot of little things, okay? Do a lot of little things. That's where the frustration stays a little less, okay? Let's just put some light right in there. Build that beautiful petal right there. Right into this one. See how it's just, see, it's all those layers now, and I'm feeling the thicker paint right now as I put these lights on. So when you got a lot of paint and it moves really easy, it's hard. So just, you know, keep pushing through it and let some of these paint, sometimes just go get a cup of coffee or something and let it tack up a bit, and then it works so much prettier as the colors start to you know, as they start to tighten up with the thick and thin. So And out here, these are already tight. See the difference? I lay it out. These are already tight here. But I can push and push these in, push these colors in here. Get that in and out there really easy. And again, you know, don't always, if you're not sure of your paints, then use a brush. Don't use your hands. But I know these, so let's get that beautiful violet here. Now you can have a darker color sitting on top of a lighter color here too. So right in here, I can push that violet of this one right there, sitting on that one, and then we can maybe put a edge of a lighter petal here, or I can push some of that beautiful violet right up underneath here. Let those two collide there for a minute as I figure out which one I want to sit on top. I think I'll put the top one here on top. So just like that. And I'll let this other one just movement and fade away down here. Maybe not even an edge there. So let's go back to our number 6 little filbert. Push that light in there. Let's push a few more light little petals out here. A little more light right up here into the front. Keep it right up in here in the front so we don't, because we turned that a little bit up, so we want to keep it right here into the very front, right in here, that light, because that'll keep it turned. And I took out just a bit, so let's just push that right back in there. That makes it turn again. That's pretty good. Let's put a few little marks right out here into that softness. This is our center, really our queen right up here, I think. So I'll put a little more movement in her, in these. Right up in there. That's pretty. Right, then we'll come down. Let's go a little bit of gray into this as we start some of these. And we won't put edges, as much edges. So now we're going to just move the color around and softer. So here you'll have edges. Here you'll have a bit more softness. So I'll push in a bit more. So I'll get not quite as edges. Maybe touch the edges, move around a bit so that everything is going to stay softer. And a little bit of grayness here. Push in and out a bit. There. And model it around, push it around. See, I'm not tapping around as much and building edges. I'm building just movement around here. I'll have some edges, of course. We have to. But I'm just having some movement around there. Here. Softness. Keep it softer. I like those real quick, like strikes, soft color strikes. There. Might put in a few right in here. But little edges are what advances it, so you might want to come back and touch a few little edges too. So light side shadow. See how the shadow encroaches in here? And if it doesn't encroach enough, just go back and push some in. Take some of that out. Push some of that shadow right in there like that. Some of this nice violet. Just push it in a bit. take out some of that light. A little too much right there, so I'll just add a few more. I just, you know, I used to, when I first started, the same as you guys when you put it in there. Oh, that looks wrong. That was this. And I just keep going and I keep going. And as I get through, I go back and say, okay, well, maybe I'll do that onto this one. The questions start to get answered. Does that make sense? You just keep pushing forward. Do not, and this is a common thing, do not get focused in on painting one and only doing one. Move through them, because one will give you ideas for the next one, or you go back. Does that make sense? So keep pushing forward. Keep working and building them. That's where they get pretty. That's what I've noticed after all the years. That's what I do. And that's where they get pretty. So we'll put a bit more movement right in around here. Here. Some soft, but the light is beginning to fade down here. Here. And they're getting softer. We can really give a nice light direction by popping a little more light right in there. Right in there like that. Pop a little more light, maybe a big light right out here. Some more white, some thicker white. Right out there like that. That's kind of neat. Let's round this in just a bit. That did not work very well, so I put in a little heavier white. That's better. Round that in just a bit. Let's go down here. Now we'll add a little bit more yellow and some of these violets here. So this white is not white. It's darker yet. Let's get a little yellow, some of these violets right in here. Softer colors. Here, push in and out. That's still nice and wet. Let's grab just a little bit of light here. But we're going to let these really diminish down, really fade away out here. The big main one's right up here. So, you know, we might take a little yellows here and reset just a bit. Let's reset a bit of these yellows. Maybe some of that beautiful yellow right in there. Usually to the warm side, but you know, you can also get some of that over here to the cool side, right? Yeah, pretty little colors of it, and maybe little marks of the brighter yellow, just little bits of it. Because you can see just brighter marks of them, right? So make sure you touch a few of those in there. And see, I work on that one, jump back up here to that one. That's how I like to do it. And jump around a bit. Here. Here like that. Here, down, that one's kind of okay here. You know, a little bit of softer yellow. Let's get down into the softer grays. Grays down in here a bit more. Now, you know, this one I might just paint all with my bigger brush. So the edges, there's no edges. It's just soft color movement because it's going away. Does that make sense? Edges are important for... But I don't need, maybe a few, and I can do them really soft here with my big brush. I don't need that little filbert to make those edges. And let's just grab a little bit of light coming in here. Here. And it says that's where the light is. And we'll take some of this grayed shadow, pull that out. grade shadow right there. Some lights. Here we go. Just really, really soft. I kind of like that, but I kind of want it just a little softer, I think. So, and I'm not real sure. So what I'm going to do is let it tack up a few minutes and then push on it. If I let it tack up a few minutes, I can soften it out really easy. Let's come down into here and we'll get just really wispy with it here. Just push that around. And see, this is still wet. I added that open medium and all that other stuff. And we'll grab just a little bit of real soft violets and grays with the lights here. And a little bit of movement here. Push that around, blur it. That's why I don't blend it, I call it blurring. Blend is when you make more color. Here I just blur the edges all into there, that one's falling apart. This is the main one right up here. And so I like to focus on that one. Let's take some open medium, some of our lights, some of our grays right in here. And we'll just paint like the back side of some younger ones here. Quick, a little bit of our yellows here. You can see some of them that would open up into some yellows. Maybe a bit of the light right up here by the front of it. I love those quick marks there. And a bit of the yellow coming right in there. Right like that. Get some of that nice light. Now you'll see it really starts to build the paint here. Right up in there like that. Let that light hitting right in there. And if I want, you know, they have that little transparent edge that I spoke about. And you know, so sometimes I will come back with that little bit of shadow and just hit the edge up there to give it that little translucent edge. And that's up to you whether or not you do that, whether you know, right up there by the edge. You just hit a little shadow and it gives it that little translucent edge. Let's put a bit more of the lighter, almost gray right in here. Softer. Build it up a bit. That guy really, this one really starts to take over the composition, which is what I want. Here. I got that just a bit too light right in there, so I'll just back some of it out with a little bit of that violet shadow right in there. Push it in out a bit. And redraw it, this just a bit here. A few more little lights. Maybe a touch of that yellows right in there. Right in there like that. That's just kind of pretty. Yeah, so, and I'm just going to let those just stay back there. We were maybe going to have another soft one, maybe a bit of extender, some of the softer. We'll push one right back there, maybe not quite as light. It's away from the light side, so we will have a little bit of light here. But we will have a little bit of light, but maybe not so much. There. And a bit of our yellow in there. There, like that. That's kind of pretty. And so now, you know, I can put in more light. I can put in some dark. I'm going to streak in some lighter yellow, green, So we'll start to add some of this lighter yellow green into the painting. Here, casually. Here, a little bit into here. And we could make a few, like you see over there, just the future hollyhocks here, just ideas of them. I love to paint the impressionism, so I'm not going to paint perfect. Just a little green and a little yellow, and just a little half circle of it there. That's all I'm going to do. And but we'll take some of this out here. We'll get some of this darker leaf colors. Ideas here. Like that. It's kind of pretty. Little, just marks, you know, sometimes I just don't do leaves. I do just the impression, but you can, you know, because you can see it's just a mass of color in the little pods, and you know, so you can just emulate them, you know, more than anything else. You can just come here and just emulate some of the other little stuff. Doesn't have to be, so we can just make a little bit of another little pod here, another little future hollyhock. You can make some leaves. You can drag some more light down through. You know, I love to let's go back to my favorite brush, the 3/4, and I'll go to thin. I go to thin, back to thin. I'm going to work the background. So I go back down to thin paint. So if I collide with my hollyhock or something, it loses. The thin paint loses to the hollyhock. Does that make sense? The thickness of your paint is so important. So I'll grab a little thin and pull through some of this. So thinner. This is what I love to do. So I'll take that out and pull through some of the edges. Got a squeaky in my chair there. And so I'll grab some of this light. Let's get out. Oh boy, I blew through the white like crazy on this one. So, yeah. And let's go through a little more light. Pull through. Thin. Pull through. Here, right like that, that movement through it. I love the movement here. And you can grab a little bit of that light, touch into some of that, just let it blur out. It is so pretty. We can touch in, get rid of some of that dark right there, right into the light a bit, blur out some of that. This back here, I just might leave it all in there. I like to paint all different kinds of looks, and you know, some people really like some of them, some will like more than the others, you know. I mean, everybody's different in our likes and dislikes. My job as the artist is to create all different kinds of expressions and looks. That's what I like to do. And some of them I don't care for as much, but you know, some of them that I didn't care for as much sold right away. So, you know, I've never painted absolutely everything that I like. I paint for techniques and looks and the joy of painting and creating. I love to do that. And so, yeah, and so when you're on a journey like this with me, you'll paint stuff, you know, I make my students paint stuff they don't like all the time because we need it. We need the structure of that. So We all need the structure of that. So this is a little longer one, a little over an hour. What, an hour? We'll probably finish up here in just a few minutes. So, but yeah, that's I like that. See, I'll just blur some of that around. I like some of that brighter blue in there. Some of that stuff. Let's get some of that green, some of our yellows, some of that lighter green there. Right in there. Right like that. Yeah, that looks kind of good. Let's put back some of our darks, our shadows there. See, I'm just emulating all of the leaves and the movements. I don't want anything to compete with that big old flower right up there, right? That's the main thing right up there. So we'll, yeah, a little bit of that, a few other little marks. I love these little type of just marks. I always call them the little sparks. And so I might come back with a real light yellow-green as a few little sparks here and there like this. I like those. Just little sparks of the light coming through. And let's go back. So I'll put that brush away there. Let's go back. Look at our real lights one more time. Rinse the brush out. Set in some real lights. Real white. Remember, it all dries down. And sometimes, you know, and this is why I'll put it away and look at it in another day or so. But what happens is you think you have it light enough and then it all dries down. Sometimes the darker layer comes up through the white a little bit. And you go, oh, shoot, that's not quite light enough. Well, you just sit down and lighten it back up again. That's all you do. So let's put a little blue. That nice, pretty little blue. There, that's pretty. So just a bit on the phthalo side. This sharper little blue. It's pretty. That'll let that sit right up underneath there. There, like that. See, that little blue is that real crisp. You know, phthalo is a neutral. It's not really cool. Everyone calls it cool, but it's not. It's a neutral. But it's sure, because I was using all of the warmer yellow oxides and those burnt siennas, it'll look cool really quick. So it's perfect in here for some of that. Yeah. Some of that little movement. And this is the part of the painting. I just slow down and I just have some fun. Add some of these other little color touches. Sometimes a little open medium, sometimes a little extender. Depends on if I want it thicker or thinner here. Yeah, just pretty stuff. There, that looks pretty good. Thing is, should I build a bigger? Yeah, I kind of like that, but it's all a question of how much to do now. So I got all that light, and you can come back and push a little shadow like I have right out here out to the edge to give it more of a transparent look that some of those have. That's up to you. You know, you just take some of your shadows here, you know, your violet shadows, and mostly in your violet, and I like it slightly grayed, so a little burnt sienna in it here, and not too dark, so a little bit of white here, but you can push it right along the edges there and give that little transparent edge, that little edge if you want, and that will give you that transparency or that transparent look to the edge of the petal. That's up to you. Push a bit of that right up underneath there. Right in there, that's pretty. So it's a little bit of shadowing, you know, a little bit more right down in here. That turns this flower a bit more. maybe just a touch of the light out here on the edge. That's a little heavy, but I'm going to push it in. So I'll push it in. I'm actually pushing it into the other wet layers there. And so that sits there. That one I'm just going to let fade away. Got enough, maybe a couple a little bit more lights right up here, and we'll call it a few more little light a little further out so that the center's a little further out. And then I think I got kind of a pretty little painting here. Don't forget to breathe. There we go. Just fun little stuff. A little bit here. I love the colors, the color movements through them. So there you go. It's kind of a high contrast thing, but you know, and then it'll dry down. And when it dries down, you may, you know, be prepared. You may have to come back and hit some of those light petals. I'm going to hit this light just a little more right here. You may have to hit them again one more time after it starts to dry down. That happens a lot. That's just a normal thing, that acrylics dry down a bit. But, you know, it's something that I know and something that I plan for. So I'm just going to give, just with the chisel part of my brush here, a little bit more of an edge here. Just like that. And we'll just let that sit there. So there you go. Okay. So, yeah, nice fun little painting there. So if you, you know, like, subscribe to the channel. And don't forget to click that like button. There goes my daughter's dog in the background. I'm photobombed again. Click the like on the video, please. That helps the distribution of it. And then subscribe to the channel. And I'm going to be adding some more flowers here. As a matter of fact, I'm going to turn around and paint it this evening. And then we'll edit that up and get it up on the channel. We have a couple of them all lined up to film in that. And then over on our main channel, we just put up another landscape. I've got a Western and another big formal master floral coming too. And a really large landscape that I drew up yesterday as well. A lot of stuff happening. So make sure that you subscribe to the channels. Click that little bell so you don't lose any of, so they remind you of it here. And I think it's time. Hi, Callie. I think it's time for the dogs that telling me it's time for them to go outside. Okay. Thanks very much for joining me, guys. I hope you enjoy that painting, and I hope you give it a try. It's really a lot of fun. Okay. All right. I'll see you on the next one. Hi, baby. Hi, baby. Yeah. Do you want to go for a walk or something? Yeah.